You with this afternoon's program, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce another of our PhD alumni, Dr. Pamela Marie Spiteri, who works in the Ministry for Education and Employment in Malta and was on the ESJ program. And Pamela is going to talk about the link between school, home, and the community in terms of tackling early leaving from education and training. So we look forward to your presentation, Pamela, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to share this presentation centered around transforming the critical link between school and home through a family community link program. It's an honor to stand with you here today, and I thank you again, Dawn, and also Rebecca for the support as I delve into a topic that I believe is transformative in nature. What I'm presenting today is part of a research project I'm leading at the Ministry for Education in Malta, where I lead the ELET unit, Early Leaving from Education and Training unit, which was formerly referred to as early school leaving. Probably you're all familiar with the term. So probably you hear me say often during this presentation, ELET or ELET. It's the abbreviation for early leaving from education and training, and it saves time when you're limited for time in a presentation. Okay, so next slide. In our educational landscape, so this is basically my introduction and background, one of the most pressing challenges we face in the spectrum of ELET. It's a complex issue that transcends mere statistics whilst impacting the very fabric of our society. When a student disengages from education prematurely, the repercussions are far-reaching, touching not just their future prospects, but also the vitality of our communities. We see potential unfulfilled, talents untapped, and aspirations dimmed. Therefore, I argue that all stakeholders should take a collective responsibility to address this challenge head-on. ELET isn't merely a percentage, like it's often presented to us, but it's also a manifestation of multifaceted issues, often rooted in a lack of connection between school and home. Understanding the reasons behind disengagement and devising proactive measures is pivotal. But what's equally crucial is acknowledging the pivotal role of bridging this gap, a role that through research and practice we aim to partially fulfill through a joint effort within the ministry by developing a family community link program. We were just speaking of journeys, and I would like to share my own in this, how we reached this program. The journey towards transforming this link wasn't an easy one and still isn't. Nor is it one that can be accomplished in isolation. It requires collaboration, time, dedication, and innovative approaches that bind educators, families, policymakers, students, and communities together. The journey started by trying to determine the pivotal issue of ELET. It all began, I think, with three fundamental questions. When are the students leaving the system? Why are they leaving the system? And crucially, who is leaving the system? ELET, as defined by International Classification of Education, is defined as those not obtaining upper secondary education. However, I have been arguing that ELET is not merely a statistic, but it's a narrative woven with multifaceted layers that demand our attention much before higher secondary education. In fact, when we asked when, we unveiled a timeline where students disengaged before completing upper secondary education, truncating their path to qualifications and opportunities. Why then became the heart of the matter, unraveling complexities like disengagement due to socio-economic challenges, lack of support, or disillusionment with traditional educational structures. But who is leaving the system is perhaps the most poignant question. It's our students, the young ones, the young minds and promising talents who are finding themselves outside the educational sphere prematurely, with aspirations unrealized and potentials untapped. It is here that the first identified gap could be said to be as that of prevention as opposed to compensating when students are older and have reached upper secondary education. It is through these questions that I got closer to sparking the collective resolve to address these questions, but also to find some tangible solutions and starting points. And that's how I found myself delving into this critical issue, armed not just with the identified ELET risk factors shown here on the screen, but with the commitment to redefine this narrative, ensuring that every student, no matter which background they came from, remained on their educational path, empowered and supported to achieve their fullest potential. The first tangible program I developed was that of launching the ELET strategy that strived to implement a comprehensive whole school approach to addressing ELET risk factors. It had primarily two main aims, and in order to reach these aims, I obtained European social funds and led a research group tasked to develop a roadmap through recommendations deriving from the various stakeholders. One of the key stakeholders comprised of educators, who frequently expressed concerns to us policymakers and also researchers about inadequate communication during the research and design phase of new educational programs, not only in Malta, but also in broader contexts. In addition to gathering research insights from parents, students, NGOs, educators, and senior management teams through surveys, interviews, and focus groups, a dedicated educators working group was established in order to be able to analyze critical discourse. 10 educators were selected from the 10 educational colleges in Malta to provide their perspectives on the potential development of a more concrete program aimed at addressing the main aims of the new strategy. The findings highlighted the absence of feasible parental engagement, identity challenges for children and adults, and communication gaps resulting in service fragmentation. Furthermore, the inadequate communication between parents and educators was found to be widening the gap in understanding students' cultural background and learning context. This lack of understanding perpetuates misalignments between home cultures and school expectations, contributing to identity challenges for children. As a consequence, children face the burden of navigating divergent cultural norms without adequate support to bridging from either context. Therefore, one of the main recommendations emerging to address these needs was to develop a differentiated level of need program. Addressing this barrier requires concentrated efforts to establish robust communication channels between parents and educators, fostering collaboration and understanding to support children's holistic development and educational success. Also, we frequently tend to focus on intervention and compensation progress, but tend to limit on universal and selected prevention strategies, which could be vital in mitigating ELET risk. Thus, after being approved for national funds, which was a very long journey, an initiative for a family community school program is presently in progress, aiming primarily to elevate communication through a preventative, universal, and selected program, in order to act as a vital connection between school, home, and the wider community. Its core objective is to bolster support for the diverse identities of students, families, and educators. This program centers on empowering significant adults in children's lives, mainly parents and teachers, with a key focus on enhancing their ability to take meaningful action and increasing their capital and agency. This program is still under development, but currently we are using strategic foresight strategies to analyze current case studies and how the application of the FCSL would be used. A training program is also being developed because we aim to be launching the first pilot program during the next scholastic year, so 2024 at the start, 2025. Okay, what are we expecting? So the main expectations and our research prospects for the pilot projects is to ask if this program will be increasing community size with schools, if it will be increasing support to teachers, which they have asked for, if it's going to improve the communication with parents, if students will feel freer to increase their identity awareness, and also what impact this could have on a national level. So as my conclusion, I think I was super fast. As my conclusion, basically what we aimed for and the main value of this program is that we are aware that providing free schools is not sufficient for an inclusive, socially just education system. And that's why this program aims to develop agency of parents and educators to increase students' real opportunities. Okay. I thank you for your time. I hope I wasn't too fast, but I think I have plenty of time for any questions.
No, thanks very much, Pamela. You've certainly been within time, and there are a few minutes left for questions. So that was a really interesting presentation. Thank you very much for that. And I certainly know that the issue that you're looking at and the sort of the links between school and home is certainly quite a wide issue. And I think this seems to be this sort of loosening of young people remaining in education and training seems to be quite a major issue, particularly in certain areas and regions. But I think that it's a really interesting study that you're doing, and that's looking at that. So it'll be fascinating to see how that moves forward, and what happens within the schools and with parents. I mean, from my own perspective, I'm quite interested in how the technology is used in order to support those sorts of links and the development of prospects and ideas and the sharing, a greater sharing at
Parallel, like because of the time I didn't delve into theory and I couldn't go, but in parallel, so this is just part of it. But in parallel, we also have planned a data warehouse. We call it data warehouse in order to, so we're building those risk factors. We're trying to build a risk indicator. So it goes in parallel with the program through technology. Okay, we're a bit stuck there, but the tender has been out more than once. So we're stuck with HR, with human resources, which I think is it's a worldwide issue at the moment. But it's moving on.
Yes, that's wonderful. Yes, that's really interesting. And I mean, certainly some of the work that I've been doing recently have been looking at the value of technologies in generating greater linkages from children in early years. And in a way, one often sees that the links with parents, children, and schools actually is reduced as the children move through schools, particularly from primary into secondary,
Yes.
or elementary into higher. But I think that there seem to be some possibilities that the certain ways in which technologies might be used might actually help to reinforce some of those ways in which linkages can be developed, which will have meaning for children of different ages as they move forward. Because I think these concepts of agency and individualism shift quite fundamentally at certain times, and therefore the ways in which those young people are thinking tends to move and shift in particular directions. So yeah, fascinating work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful to Lancaster because it all started during my PhD journey. A bit before, but it got consolidated during my PhD journey. So I'll be eternally grateful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't